Hey, science crew. Today I wanted to help you out with a couple vocabulary words that will help you or enable you to be able to describe what's happening with objects as they fall through the sky. These three words will help us understand better why objects fall the way they fall. For example, why if we drop a feather and a hammer on the moon, they hit at the same time. I like to start with a little interesting tidbit. These images are of the world's highest, longest free fall done by Felix Baumgartner. He jumped from 24 miles in the air, broke the sound barrier, and traveled at over 800 miles per hour from his little space capsule that was traveled up by a weather balloon. So he was a pretty incredible falling object, and I just find the images really dramatic, and I highly recommend you take a look at more about him in our other assignments. Anyway, gravity, of course, is the substance that pulls all of us down towards the center of the earth, okay? And it always is a downward arrow. Gravity is going to have or pull on objects harder or more the more mass they have. So the more particles that are inside an object like the elephant, the more gravity will pull down upon them. It'll be a bigger force. So if the elephant's falling through the air, which would be super weird and like Dumbo style, there would be a larger vector or force pulling down on that elephant, as opposed to a mouse, which is less matter or less mass. There's going to be a smaller force of gravity pulling it downward. So that's a really important thing to know, both when we're drawing vector drawings and when we're thinking about how objects fall and the way they fall. The other force that we have to consider is air resistance. Now, air resistance is going to work upward sometimes when things are falling or backward when things are moving forward. But either way, it's the friction specifically caused by air particles as we move through them. So as we walk through the air, bike through the air, fall through the air, we are rubbing up against air particles and producing a little bit of heat and friction and losing some of our energy or the force of movement to that friction. What's important about air resistance is that the faster an object goes, the more air resistance it gets. So the jet, for example, which is traveling faster than the speed of sound, is going to be bumping into an incredible number of air particles per second. Okay, and the more air particles you run into, the more friction that you're going to produce. So that plane experiences a massive amount of friction, which is why it has to be so aerodynamic so it can actually go that fast. The duck on the right is going super slow compared to that. So it's only bumping into like a couple is relative, air particles per second. So it doesn't produce a lot of friction. So remember, the faster an object travels, whether it's a car, boat, jet, plane, whatever, the more air resistance or friction it's going to encounter. So that's really important. That arrow gets bigger, the faster something gets. Last but not least is surface area. Surface area just means how much surface there is for the air to run into. So when we are talking about friction, like if you look at the vehicles in the image, the large truck has a lot more surface for air to bump into or run into or produce friction against. So the more surface you have, the more friction you have. And you know this if you've ever sat up on a bike when the wind is blowing really hard and it can like blow you back. You want to hunch down when you walk, bike, or ski and you're dealing with a lot of air resistance or friction because it makes you smaller and easier for things to flow over top of you. The car that is small requires less force to move because there's less friction against it. Think about a sail. A sail needs to be big to catch the air. A skydiver opens themselves spread eagle to slow down, but will tuck up into a ball to move faster, making there less space or surface for the air particles to bump into. I hope this helps you out a little bit with some vocabulary, some words, and some better understanding of some of the details about why things fall the way they fall.